All right, today we are talking about fix your intake. I am just so incredibly blown away when I watch socials and I'm in all these Facebook groups to see how many attorneys are struggling with intake. First and foremost, I'm just delighted that we know this terminology, that we're talking about intake and that we're taking it seriously versus the olden days when I started out in 97 and we would hear, I need just a receptionist. Now we're talking about intake. Now we're talking about non attorney salespeople. Now we're talking about conversions. Now we're taking it seriously. Every single phone call. Like, I love it. The fierce addiction to tracking leads, the fierce addiction to equipping and educating and coaching and empowering our team on how to answer the phone. They're your director of first impressions. So, how do we fix our intake? What do we do with this? In the law firm admin boot camp, I'm a lunatic. People are like, oh, here we go. She's going to talk about tracking and measuring. And yes, yes. And I want people to get excited about it because the only way out is through. So, when your team members, when you're struggling, if you cannot run a report at the drop of a hat or walk down the hall to grab a cup of coffee and say to Susie, how are we doing with tonight's workshop? What do we got? And she's like, boom, we have 38 registered. Two of them already called and canceled. But don't worry, I have them rescheduled for the other one. And oh, by the way, I also scheduled them a 15-minute initial consultation to get like if they cannot just spit out your data at the versus making stuff up. I've written about this in my books and what have you, where a lot of times people get nervous when the attorney would ask, and they would make stuff up. Yeah, I think everybody's coming, we're all registered, and then they walk in there and there's not enough numbers or there's nobody in the room or what have you. And then we go and pull the report if we could find one or look at the spreadsheet or whatever we have. We're like, what the heck? Like you're just making crap up. And people, employees, team members do that because they get nervous. So if you do not have like the freaking precise data and information and your people are not pumped about this and don't know and aren't so excited to shoot out these numbers and they don't understand them, especially if you are outsourcing to, there's many outsourcing companies that I love, for Smith AI, Ring Central, whatever they might be. I am a huge fan of them for overflow. I'm a huge fan for them for nights and weekends. I'm a huge fan of them if you are getting your personal injury or med mal and you're getting 110 leads a day. I'm a huge fan of it. But, and disclaimer, as long as you can get all the reporting. So, for example, this week, we have a law firm. They just started doing Facebook ads to a workshop. They've done 3 workshops already. So now we've closed out the workshop. We have a process for intake and client services. And so we're looking at the data and the marketing coordinator and the receptionist, intake coordinator in there, and they're kicking the can. They're like, oh my gosh, this sucks. We had 106 leads total. So we're going through each workshop. Workshop number 1, 38 registrations, 30 shows, 86% conversion to appointment, then our higher rate. And then we're going to the next one. And, roughly both of them, I'm not going to spit out all the numbers. I don't have time. But, we're looking at the number of registrations, number of confirmation calls, how many times we hit them to remind them, how many people proactively canceled or rescheduled, how many no showed, how many showed up, how many booked the appointment, how many from the booked appointment hired, how many are in the follow-up, what stage they are in the follow-up in the client connect and client care calls and follow-up calls, etc. So we're looking at it. And they're like, oh my God, this is great. This is terrible. We only got hired by 16 people. I'm like, guys, time out. Like we have the data. This is part of intake and understanding it. Okay. So let's look at it. You have 106 leads, qualified leads. Let's just start there. For the total spend was like $8,000. Do the math. That alone is a home run. How many people showed up? How many booked appointments, how many raised their hand, and how many hired us? So when we start backing into this, we have like 89 something leads that we are still working on. People need to see things 42 times before they take action. So when it comes to intake, it's not just being nice, being funny, and being cute and converting them and getting them into the appointment. That's like step point five. It's not even step one. Like people need to get to the appointment. They need to be excited about the appointment. They need to do their homework. We need to know what to do when they cancel and reschedule and no show. Like the whole process, I'm a lunatic about it. I love it. And now my people love it because when they start to understand that, so they're super pumped when they're doing the follow up calls after intake and like, oh my gosh, I did 28 calls and I only got 4 booked appointments. I'm like, your average fee is $10,000. That was $40,000 of potential revenue for your 74 minutes of time. Good return on investment, phenomenal return on investment, especially if you have a bonus attached to it, especially if we're gamifying it. So go the calendar, so go cash flow. So if you are like frustrated with intake, maybe you're frustrated because you don't understand what it means. Maybe you think intake is just answering the phone and getting the person to book the first step in your process. No, that's not even step one. It's like half the step. Like that's just part of the equation. So it's really understanding it, making sure your people understand, all people. So if you're outsourcing phones for overflow, for nights, for weekends, what have you, and that we have the data and the metrics and we know how to read it and we know how to understand it. And it's not up to you as the attorney to have to lead it and educate it. You don't need to have a master's in intake and sales and conversions and all that. You just need to give me your people and let me train them and let them come to you with the beautiful reports and then present to you what the reports mean and where the wins are and where the not so wins are and how we're taking the not so wins and turning them into a win. So if you're confused, if you're in these Facebook groups talking about intake and all this other stuff, reach out to me because I want to fix this for you. I want your team to fix this for you. I want them to be excited about fixing this. I want it to be systematized. I want you to be educated so you're never held hostage again.